Oh man, Discipline Priest is a fun healer to play, and I still have no idea how I'm keeping people up, but I am! And you'll learn how too, by checking our video for the talents, gear rotation, and everything to take your Bubble Boy into raids and Mythic Plus. So let's kick it off with the talents. Before going on, I feel like we need to clarify a few things. Playing a healer is not something as straightforward as DPS, and I never felt the need to say this until now. Discipline is not a difficult healer to play. It's difficult to play properly. Don't let that discourage you. It's a very engaging spec and one of the most fun healers in the game with, if not the best, defensive cooldowns for a group. First row, take Schism for both raids and dungeons. This talent works amazing for your damage windows where you start topping people off. If you know you won't need to use it to heal, you can simply use it on cooldown for its damage component. More on this in the rotation. There's an argument to be made for dungeons with Twist of Fate. This is a more defensive option since you won't have other healers to pad healing off of, so if you feel the incoming damage is too big, try this one out and see how it plays out. Second row, take Feather. Feather is the best mobility option on this row, and if you can macro it properly, it can work wonders for you. There's a nifty little macro that you can use to cast Feather on you or at a location with a single button, and I wholeheartedly recommend you to use it. Third row is the generally accepted mana regen row. After the Mindbender nerfs, Power Word Solace is by far the best option here. Not only for mana regen, but for the damage and atonement healing. Its cooldown synergizes with Schism, since if you cast both on cooldown, you will have Solace align with Schism for every other cast. Fourth row is an important utility row, important as in picking Shining Force because it's really good. If you played Resto Druid, you'll recognize the need to displace mobs and make room or space, not to mention it has amazing practical utility during Sanguine weeks. Fifth row has two main options. I recommend you pick Sins of the Many for both raiding and Mythic Plus. It increases your damage the fewer atonements you have on, which might sound counterproductive. But the damage gain is still important considering the more atonements you have, the more overall healing you do, especially in raids, and if there's no healing to be done, meaning no or very few atonements out, then you do increased damage transferred into more healing on your target, mostly the tank. Shadow Covenant has some uses if you need burst healing, especially in dungeons, and you can play with it, but for our video we recommend one main build to start things off, so go with Sins of the Many. Sixth row, Purge the Wicked is the go-to, especially for the option to spread it to multiple targets. The build focuses on doing as little direct healing to allies as you can and using Penance offensively, meaning Purge should always get the benefit of being spread. Plus, it looks way cooler than Shadow War Pain, let's be honest. Last row, you have again two options. When raiding, take Evangelism. This talent requires a specific playstyle to pull off properly, which I will go into in the rotation section, but basically you pick it to prepare for a damage intake window where you apply atonements on as many targets as you can, pop the talent, then start doing some massive AoE healing for the duration. For Mythic dungeons, Lenient is the go-to. Evangelism isn't going to be as effective in smaller groups, and Barrier, again, isn't as ideal since it replaces a very powerful defensive cooldown. Since in dungeons the damage intake is steady and consistent almost throughout the entire run, Lenience's efficiency starts to pile up by the end, and this one is one of the more hidden aspects as to why Discipline is good, but the meters don't really show it. If you are new to healing and simply looking for something to pick up and start learning, then following a basic stat priority is what you want. Ideally, always go for eye level, meaning intellect, above all else. Secondary stats are good, but intellect is still the best. If you have to choose between two items of the same eye level, know that haste is usually a better stat than most, followed very closely by crit. Versatility is also super close to crit with mastery at the bottom. However, all secondary stats are good, and if you play enough, you will start to realize when you want a bit more crit or a bit more versatility, since you'll be able to feel it, if that's a thing, in your overall performance. For trinkets, I would recommend you go for DPS trinkets because DPS is converted into healing for discipline priests. Basically, anything giving you intellect, haste and crit procs will be amazing. There are quite a few that you can choose from, so I won't just list a bunch of loot tables, but I will mention a few I feel are worth mentioning. With this logic, one of the trinkets I see most priests use is Crest of Paku, that drops from Conclave. Clearly good for the haste proc, and if you're still going to raid until 8.2 comes out, you'll eventually get this one. Another one that drops from the Zara lore is Incandescent Sliver. This trinket has to be one of the best trinkets for casters in the game. As you can tell, there's a catch to it. If you cannot maintain the stacks for it, I would recommend skipping it honestly. Two other trinkets that also work good, possibly better in dungeons than in raids, are Conch of Dark Whispers and Ignition Mage's Fuse. Excepting the Incandescent Sliver, all of the other trinkets are fairly straightforward and you can use them both in raids and in dungeons. Remember to spread out your secondary stats as much as you can though, because if you're leaning more into one, it will make it slowly lose its value in the face of others. Not gonna lie, for the past few months, as I was trying to gear my Discipline Priest, I had the worst combination of Azerite traits possible. Discipline is probably the most difficult spec to get proper Azerite traits for, but don't let that discourage you again. That being said, certain traits do become efficient depending on how the encounter goes, and since you cannot really control that, you can at least understand it and prepare accordingly. As a general rule, you want some damage dealing traits. Death Throes and Treacherous Covenants are damage traits you can stack, as well as Bonded Souls. Enduring Luminescence though is a great trait to have once. It buffs the Radiance, extends the duration of Atonement from 60 to 70%, all in all a good pick. Lastly, and this comes down to your playstyle, Death of the Shadows is another trait you can get. If you find yourself needing to Shadow Mend a lot, stack this trait as many times as you need, or simply use it once. It makes your mends really strong once you have the 30 stacks and usually works better if you have Purge on multiple targets. One trait will make your mend okay to cast on a target taking moderate damage. Stacking it 3 times increases the healing but not the rate at which you get the stacks, making mend a considerable spell to cast, but you have to sacrifice other traits to do so. Damage most of the time. I mentioned gearing disc is difficult because the traits accomplish different things and they are good depending on your playstyle. And getting a specific combination will take some farming. Feel free to not feel restricted and pick what you think works best for your playstyle. For secondaries, again, pick stat giving traits if you want more damage, or traits like Concentrated Mending to boost your overall healing directly. When you think of rotation for Discipline Priest, you need to think of two general concepts: the ramp up phase and the damage phase. The ramp up phase is when you prepare for future healing you will need to do by applying as many atonements as you can or is needed. This means you'll need to perceive and expect incoming damage by knowing the fight, since it won't help that much if your group already took the damage and you go, "Oh shit, I need to heal them now." Knowledge of the fight will be part of your success as a Discipline Priest. As such, the ramp up rotation is a compound activity of a few actions you need to take when raiding. First, always have Shadow Word Pain or Purge the Wicked up on all enemy targets. This is something you should do regardless if you are planning on ramping up or not. Use Power Word Shield on allies or Shadow Word Mend if the incoming damage is higher to have 5, 6, maybe 7 atonements out. Cast your first charge of Radiance to add 4 more atonements. After that, use the Shadow Fiend cooldown. Cast your second Radiance to give you around 10 to 15 total atonements. Then use Evangelism to extend the duration of all of your atonements. After this, you enter the damage dealing phase. In the damage phase, you start with Schism, followed quickly by Power Word Solace, which you will be using on cooldown. If you have the power of the Dark Side proc, use Penance here, or use Penance if you have to move. Otherwise, just spam Smite, and that's it. While you do this, make sure you keep the dot on the boss and the ads. For Mythic Plus, the rotation is a damned down version since you won't have that many targets, but won't have Evangelism as well. Make sure to apply Atonement with shields or mends, preferably shields, then start your damage phase. This is not something you can establish that concisely as in raids, since Mythic Plus are more chaotic. You will need to adapt, but the basic concept remains the same. The rest of your rotation comes down to how you use and, well, rotate your cooldowns. Use pain suppression usually on your tank when the incoming damage will be very high. Use Power Word Shield Barrier for the same reason but for a group of people. Keep in mind that everyone needs to stay inside the barrier to benefit from the damage reduction. Lastly, Rapture, one of your most versatile cooldowns, should be used in oh shit moments. The oh shit meaning a lot of people taking a lot of damage. This can happen during phases such as Grong's Tantrum or Bursting in Mythic Plus. Before going into the next section, consider very thoroughly on using mouse over macros or something similar. Using mouse over macros lets you apply shields and mends without deselecting your target, making it easier to DPS while healing. There are also add-ons that can help you with this, mind you. For consumables, keep it simple and stick to the stat priority. Use Pack the Face for rings and Quick Owl's Eye for gems for that juicy haste. If you can spare the gold, get one Kraken's Eye of Intellect as well. For the weapon, get Quick Navigation, again for the haste, considering it procs pretty much as often as for a DPSer, since you'll be DPSing most of the time, or should at least. For food, get Feasts in raids, or Blood Sausages if that's not an option, or you're pushing keys. If these options are too expensive, consider the best haste food you can afford then. For potions though, as with any healer, get the Flask and Battle Potions of Intellect, but also stock up on Mana Potions and Potions of Replenishment because healer life, baby. Do you like healing? We like healing! So maybe you want to check some of our other healing guides that we already have up and soon to have more in the future. There's a lot to go in depth with when it comes with Discipline Pre, so if you think I should have included something in the video and I haven't, check the section down below and look for the pinned comment I left for you guys. Shout out to the Warcraft Priest Discord channel and the wonderful people who data mined and theorycraft all the awesome information in the Priest community, some of which I have used in the guide as well. We don't want you guys to think that we're robots or mechanical in any way, but there are just so many ways that we can thank our patrons for their continuous support. We love what we do, we have a passion for it, and your support help us make this a reality. So thank you. And if you, yes, you, decided that you like our content and want to become a patron, we've left some details down below with some links. Thank you for watching the video and being awesome, and I'll see you next time.